All right, we have more changes unfolding across the Middle East, changes that have direct kinetic force now being used by Iran against Israel. No more pretending or hiding behind proxies. It's all out in the open now, folks. Complete chaos, and the Biden administration has their fingerprints all over this. The biggest secret in Washington, how US dollars are behind all of these conflicts, not just in the Middle East, but in Ukraine as well. We are quite literally funding these wars, and it's hurting this country. But before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps out the channel, and consider subscribing so you don't miss these regular updates. Late Saturday, Iran declared that its major assault on Israel, which included over 300 drones and missiles, conducted in coordination with its proxies in Iraq and Yemen, has ended. The attack, they said, was in response to Israel's strike on April 1st in Syria. Footage of the attack live streamed on social media as Israeli civilians watched the air show from their homes and from the streets, filming the missiles being taken out by Israel's Iron Dome. 331 drones and missiles launched by Iran last night. Less than 10 made it through Israel's air defenses. The US, the UK, and Jordan all assisted in intercepting and shooting down these projectiles. Now, the cost of defending against this attack estimated to be over $1 billion. Here's John Kirby, the National Security Council spokesperson, appearing nervous when answering questions about this on NBC. Watch this.
A lot of people watched what happened in the skies over the Middle East overnight, and they are wondering this morning, has this now escalated into a wider war?
I don't think there's any reason that it needs to.
But has it? Are we now in the midst of a wider war?
The president doesn't believe that it needs to move in that direction whatsoever, Kristen. What Israel demonstrated last night was an incredible ability to defend itself. Just their own military superiority was quite remarkable yesterday. I mean, very little got through, and the damage was extraordinarily light. And also, Israel demonstrated again, as I said, that they're not standing alone, that they have friends. So the president's been clear. We don't want to see this escalate. We're not looking for a wider war with Iran. I think the coming hours and days will tell us a lot.
But what's your response to Americans who see those missiles being intercepted in the skies overnight and believe that this has already escalated?
I would ask the Americans that saw what happened last night to take heart in terms of the military capability of their forces in the region, how they are defending themselves and defending our interests in the region. And also, I reiterate what I said before. Know that the president is working the diplomatic side of this personally. In fact, today, just a little bit later today, he's going to call the G7 together to talk about a diplomatic response here.
So what just happened there? Why is Kirby appearing a bit dodgy, nervous even? He's usually very calm and collected. He's a very good speaker. Because the dirty little secret is U.S. foreign policy is to continue the status quo. That means continue these regional proxy wars. Any deviation from that means the stakes become real, which happened last night. And it's something that the U.S. is not prepared for, not ready for, and 100% cannot afford. You see, the previous administration, they deviated from the policy. Trump worked toward peace. That was a big no-no. Under the Biden administration, we have multiple hot wars raging. Ukraine at war with Russia, Israel at war with Hamas, Venezuela even threatening war with its neighbor, another U.S. ally. All three of these have two things in common. The first is they're all proxy wars. For instance, Hamas is a proxy of Iran, which means Iran and the U.S. are technically at war, but silently. The U.S. using Israel to fight and Iran using Hamas. But last night, things got real. No more proxies. Iran stepped up directly, launching the missiles directly from Iranian soil. This is as dangerous as it gets. But the second thing all of these wars have in common is who's funding them, which is an interesting question. Where is the money coming to fund all of these wars? The great US of A. We're funding Russia's war with Ukraine, over $120 billion so far. We're funding all sides of the Middle East war. In fact, Congress is about to approve additional military funding this week for Israel. And what about Iran? Well, we're funding them as well, a state sponsor of bad acts, not to mention all of their surrogates, including Hamas, including Hezbollah. Let's not forget about Iraq. We're still sending boatloads of money to Iraq, who's now a satellite of Iran, which means the United States is funding the entire war in the Middle East. So why? Why would we be doing that? It's our foreign policy, folks. Watch this old clip of Julian Assange before the intel services had him incarcerated. Watch this.
Because the goal is not to completely subjugate Afghanistan. The goal is to use Afghanistan to wash money out of the tax bases of the United States, out of the tax bases of European countries, through Afghanistan, and back into the hands of the transnational security arrangements. That is the goal, i.e. the goal is to have an endless war, not a successful war.
So yesterday, Joe Biden messed up bigly. His job is to maintain the status quo, keep the gears turning, keep the money printing, but pulling Iran directly into the conflict is a step too far. That falls outside of the status quo, out of line. That means that the U.S. would have to get involved, and that's something we really can't afford. You see, what's happening here, this administration is a pawn of the system. Biden hasn't done one thing to stop any of these conflicts. He's perpetuating them, not stopping them. He could stop them. Instead, he's paying for them. And if he had a clue, he'd realize all of this hurts the United States and hurts him politically. War is expensive. It's inflationary. Joe Biden wants the Fed to cut rates before November. Well, they can't do that with inflation moving the wrong direction. To pay for all of this, we are borrowing like drunken sailors. Look at the level of borrowing Treasury has in store for this year. The orange bars, 2024, those are the Treasury auction sizes across tenors this year. 2-year Treasuries up 42%, 3 years are up 39%, 5 years scheduled to be up 41%. Look how much money this is. We are borrowing out of control, folks. It's insane. Now, why do you think Treasury's boosting the short-term auctions instead of longer-term type Treasuries like 30 years, 20 years? Because rates are so high. We don't want to be locked in having to pay 7-8% possibly for 30 years. They think they assume the Fed's going to cut rates soon, if they even can. I don't think the president has a clue, which is why the establishment is so scared of Donald Trump. He's got a mind of his own. Whether you like him or you hate him, he wants peace. He says he wants peace, and we don't have to take him for his word. We have his track record to look at. No new wars under his administration. Under Joe Biden, we're on the brink of World War III. There's technically an argument to be made that we're already in a world war. People tend to think about World War as what we saw during the First and Second World Wars, but things are different today. How we fight is different, right? All of the opponents nowadays have nuclear weapons. So direct kinetic action between superpowers may be very unlikely. This very well could be what World War looks like nowadays. Either way, to wrap this up, here's the former president last night at a rally campaigning and promising under his next administration, these wars will stop. Watch this.
What's going on with the world? What's going on? Everybody's fighting. Russia, Ukraine, Israel, the Middle East is blowing up. Everything's blowing up. China's going to be next with Taiwan because of weakness. China's going to be next. What's going on? He said, bring Donald Trump back as president and it'll all stop. It'll all stop.
All right, that wraps up this episode. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time.